There are landscapes that exist beyond the reach of any cartographer, territories not composed of earth or stone, but of thought, emotion, and memory. Carl Jung, towering among the architects of modern psychology, directed our attention not toward external threats, but inward to the realms of consciousness, where the self can lose its clarity, dignity, and direction. These are not mere bad habits or character flaws. They are psychological environments, territories of the mind, where suffering ceases to foster growth and instead breeds self-destruction. While Jung understood that pain often serves as a catalyst for transformation, he also recognized certain interior spaces where the soul becomes trapped in cycles of diminishment. What follows is an exploration of 7 psychological territories that Jung warned against inhabiting, places where the soul must never dwell if it seeks wholeness. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. These words form the cornerstone of Jung's approach to the shadow, that repository of everything within us that we refuse to acknowledge. The shadow houses our anger, envy, selfishness, and fears. It contains our unaddressed traumas alongside our buried talents and hidden potentials. Importantly, the shadow is not inherently malevolent. It is simply unknown, unexamined, and therefore unintegrated. Denial extends beyond refusing external truths. It represents a rejection of those parts of ourselves we find inconvenient, shameful, or threatening. When we deny the shadow, we unknowingly surrender our agency. We become puppets to forces we pretend don't exist within us. Consider how this manifests. We act out in passive-aggressive ways, sabotage relationships that approach too much intimacy, project our flaws onto others, or erupt with emotional intensity that seems to come from nowhere. This is the unconscious directing your life while you remain blind to its influence. To dwell in denial is to construct a house of mirrors where you perceive distorted versions of everyone else while never truly seeing yourself. You convince yourself the world teems with toxic people, failing to recognize you're reenacting unhealed wounds from your past. You blame others for your failures, unaware you've handed your power to aspects of yourself you refuse to confront. What makes denial particularly treacherous is its illusion of safety. We tell ourselves that looking inward means losing control, breaking down, falling apart. Jung maintained the opposite. Facing the shadow marks the beginning of genuine control, authentic strength, and true healing. When you integrate your shadow, the unconscious loses its power to manipulate you. The small irritations no longer trigger disproportionate rage. You stop pursuing those who don't reciprocate your affections. The compulsive need to please everyone or hide behind masks dissolves. Instead, you become whole, not perfect, but real, grounded, self-aware. Jung called this process individuation, the integration of conscious and unconscious elements of the psyche into a unified self. It begins with courage, the courage to admit you're not as virtuous, calm, or composed as you pretend to be. Therefore, when jealousy arises, don't deny it, question it. When hatred surfaces, don't mask it with false kindness, trace it to its roots. When rage builds, don't suppress it until it explodes. Listen to what it's attempting to communicate. A shadow acknowledged loses its covert power, but a shadow ignored patiently waits, watches, and eventually acts against your interests. Do not build your home in denial. Do not exile your truth. Enter the basement of your soul. Dust off the parts you've buried and engage them, not to shame them, but to understand them. Only then do you cease living your fate and begin living your truth. Beyond the shadow lies another dangerous territory. Jung recognized that suffering, when consciously examined, can catalyze profound transformation. However, when suffering is buried, denied, or repeated without reflection, it ferments into something darker: resentment. Resentment represents pain that has transmuted into poison. It manifests as the narrative we continuously tell ourselves about how we were wronged, betrayed, forgotten, or unloved. It feeds on repetition, and like a swamp, the longer we remain, the harder movement becomes. Everything grows heavier, slower, more entrenched. To dwell here means carrying old wounds as your primary identity. You might catch yourself saying, "This always happens to me," or "People never change," or "They'll regret how they treated me someday." In these moments, you're not healing. You're hoping your pain will eventually vindicate you. But resentment never punishes those who hurt you. It punishes you. You begin closing yourself off, trusting less, loving with suspicion. You might even become the very thing you resented, bitter, cold, cruel. The victim transforms into a mirror reflection of the offender. Jung observed how the shadow sneaks in through this door, convincing you that your pain renders you righteous, and therefore your anger sacred. But unexamined anger becomes a chain binding you to past injuries. In Jungian psychology, forgiveness isn't about absolving others of responsibility. It's about breaking the chain that binds you to the past. It represents a radical reclamation of energy. It means acknowledging, "This happened, it hurt me deeply, but I refuse to let it shape the remainder of my life." Transforming pain doesn't mean forgetting it occurred. It means deriving meaning from it, identifying the lesson, the strength, the boundary it taught you to establish. Jung described this as an alchemy of the psyche, transmuting emotional lead into gold. If you find yourself mired in resentment, pause and ask, "Am I feeding this resentment or freeing myself from it?" The swamp will always offer a place to lie down, but never mistake that stillness for peace. As we journey deeper into these psychological territories, we encounter perhaps the most insidious prison of all. There exists a crucial distinction between guilt and shame. Guilt says, "I made a mistake." Shame declares, "I am the mistake." Jung considered shame among the most dangerous emotional states, not because it manifests dramatically, but because it operates quietly, insidiously. Shame lurks in the psyche's corners, whispering that you are fundamentally unworthy, unlovable, beyond repair. People imprisoned by shame often appear functional externally. They work diligently, maintain social smiles, achieve success. Yet internally, they harbor a silent conviction of their fundamental brokenness. No achievement feels sufficient. No love feels deserved. No forgiveness, even from others, penetrates the walls they've constructed within. This constitutes shame's tragedy. It doesn't merely make you feel bad, it disconnects you from your own soul. It insists you must become someone else to be acceptable, even to yourself. Jung believed authentic healing begins not with perfection, but with self-acceptance. He didn't advocate indulgence in wrongdoing, but he warned against perpetual self-punishment. The psyche requires space to evolve, impossible within a cell of constant self-judgment. To remain in guilt beyond its instructive purpose isn't noble, it's self-destructive. Genuine remorse leads to growth, repair, responsibility. But shame, persistent, unyielding shame, leads to paralysis. Jung invites us to confront our inner judge and question, whose voice is this? Where did I learn that love must be earned, that I'm insufficient as I am? Often this shame was planted in childhood religion, trauma, or comparison. Yet we carry it as though it were law. You can choose today to begin unlocking that prison door, not by erasing the past, but by refusing to let it define your worth. Your mistakes are not your identity. Your past is not your destiny. The soul was never designed to exist in condemnation. Its natural home is growth, not guilt, freedom, not fear, self-respect, not self-rejection. If you seek healing, you must willingly look at yourself in the mirror, not searching for flaws but offering compassion. As Jung taught, only by embracing our entirety, both light and shadow, can we ever achieve wholeness. Moving from internal prisons to external performances, we encounter another territory Jung warned against: He introduced the concept of the persona, the social mask we wear to navigate the world, the version of ourselves we present to gain acceptance, admiration, or protection. While the persona serves a necessary function in society, to dwell entirely within it means losing yourself. The theater of persona represents the place where performance becomes identity. You begin with a mask, then forget it's a mask. You smile when you want to cry. You agree when your soul protests. You dress, speak, and behave not to express yourself authentically, but to maintain approval. Gradually, without noticing, you vanish. Your true self, your desires, pain, creativity, and inner chaos gets pushed into the unconscious. You become a character in someone else's narrative, playing a role in a script you didn't write. Jung warned against this because the soul cannot thrive in pretense. The longer you perform, the more distant your inner life becomes, eventually leading to exhaustion, numbness, or depression. Not because your life lacks meaning, but because it no longer belongs to you. In this territory, authenticity isn't merely absent, it becomes dangerous. Revealing your true self would risk rejection. Yet Jung maintained that no one achieves wholeness without facing that risk. Individuation. The path towards psychological maturity requires removing the mask piece by piece and asking, who am I really? Leaving the theater of persona isn't about rebelling against society, it's about reclaiming your soul. It means recovering the voice you silenced, the dream you postponed, the values you buried. Because no matter how admired your mask becomes, if it doesn't reflect your truth, it will never feel like love, only loneliness. When performance fails to satisfy many, retreat into the mind, yet this too can become a territory of entrapment. The human mind represents a brilliant tool. However, Jung cautioned that when disconnected from the deeper self, it transforms into a maze, a realm of endless loops, a prison of analysis, a labyrinth where thought never concludes and truth remains elusive. To dwell here means mistaking rumination for wisdom. You think and think and think, attempting to solve your pain through logic, control the future through prediction, undo the past through imagination. Yet the more you think, the further you drift from clarity. Jung emphasized the importance of intuition, symbol, and the unconscious, those aspects of the psyche that don't communicate in rational language. He recognized that healing and meaning often emerge from irrational depths rather than the logical surface. But within the labyrinth of overthinking, the heart falls silent. The body's signals go unheeded. The soul's voice, soft, intuitive, symbolic, drowns in noise. Overthinking feels safe because it creates an illusion of control. In reality, it is fear masquerading as intelligence. It keeps us trapped in decision paralysis, emotional numbness, and spiritual disconnection. Jung might say, do not solve life, feel it, dream it, live it. Because the soul doesn't speak in formulas, it speaks in metaphors, images, feelings, silence. To exit this labyrinth, you must relearn trust, not just in your logic, but in your instincts, your inner knowing. You must be willing to act, despite not having every answer. You must stop replaying the past and start inhabiting the present. Wisdom isn't knowing everything, it's knowing when to stop thinking and start living. When overthinking leads to disillusionment, many withdraw completely. Jung understood something modern psychology continues to affirm. The soul doesn't heal in isolation, it heals in relationship. Yet many wounded individuals retreat to a psychological desert, vast, empty, dry, seemingly safe but ultimately lifeless. This is where you convince yourself you don't need anyone, that people pose danger, that love represents a risk you cannot afford. Initially, it feels empowering. No expectations, no disappointments, no betrayals. But gradually, the silence becomes unbearable. What once felt like sacred solitude begins to feel like exile. In this desert, vulnerability becomes the enemy. You become excessively self-reliant, emotionally guarded, profoundly skeptical of intimacy. But what you're truly avoiding isn't other people. It's the parts of yourself that feel unworthy of being seen. Jung would remind us we are wounded in relationship and we are healed in relationship. Shadow work, trauma, recovery, self-discovery, all are necessary. But we don't become fully human until we can stand before another soul and say, "Here I am, imperfect, real, still worthy of love." To remain in isolation means living without mirrors, without the sacred friction of connection, without the challenge and joy of being truly known. Yes, connection opens us to pain, but it also opens us to joy. And the soul wasn't designed to survive alone. It was created to belong. The final territory Jung warned against is the graveyard of the past, where people go when unable to release guilt, regret, nostalgia, or grief. This place is deceptive. It feels sacred to mourn, noble to remember, but to live there means ceasing to live altogether. You become a ghost wandering through memories, reliving wounds, attempting to resurrect what has already died. The mind continuously replays what might have been. The heart clings to what was lost. The present moment blurs, ignored, unlived, unloved. Jung believed the psyche constantly calls us toward wholeness, and wholeness can only manifest in the present moment. But when facing backward, you miss the doors opening before you. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means honoring the past without becoming it. It means learning to say goodbye not just to people, but to versions of yourself that no longer serve your journey. The past contains lessons, but no life, no new breath, no forward motion. So if you find yourself walking through this graveyard, kneeling before old heartbreaks, replaying old betrayals, pause and ask, what am I keeping alive that no longer belongs in my story? Grieve it, forgive it, bless it, and leave it. Because life, as Jung observed, isn't found in clinging to what was. It's found in becoming who you are meant to be here, now fully awake. These 7 psychological territories represent places where the soul becomes diminished, disconnected, or destroyed. Jung mapped these territories not to condemn those who dwell there, but to guide them toward wholeness. The journey toward individuation, the integration of all aspects of the self, requires courage to face what we've denied, transform what has wounded us, accept what we've judged, reveal what we've hidden, feel what we've intellectualized, connect where we've isolated, and release what we've clung to. Take a moment now to reflect. Which of these territories do you currently inhabit? Where might you be stuck without realizing it? The mere act of recognition begins the process of liberation. Consider starting a shadow journal where you can explore these territories honestly, without judgment. Set aside time each day to examine one area where you feel resistance or discomfort. Remember that awareness itself is transformative. If you find yourself deeply entrenched in any of these territories, consider seeking guidance from a Jungian analyst or therapist who understands this landscape. Some journeys benefit from companionship. Most importantly, be gentle with yourself. The path to wholeness isn't about perfection, it's about integration, about bringing light to what has remained in darkness, and about reclaiming the full spectrum of your humanity. Leave the places that shrink you. Step into the space where your soul can breathe. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, but now. Your authentic self, whole, integrated, alive, awaits your return.